On dais by Shri Damu Ravi, who is Secretary Economic Relations and also Sherpa for BRICS for India. We also have Ambassador of India to Russia, Ambassador Vinay Kumar, joining us on the dais, as also Shri Abhishek Singh, who looks after multi-economic relations in the Ministry of External Affairs. I would also like to tell all of you that the language for this briefing is only English and Hindi, so please bear with us. With that, I invite the Foreign Secretary to make his remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Randir. Good afternoon, friends. I have the opportunity to brief you on the Prime Minister's main bilateral engagement today on the sidelines of the 16th BRICS Summit. My colleague, Secretary Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs, Mr. Damu Ravi, who is also our Sherpa for BRICS, will make some comments with regard to the BRICS engagements. But let me say a few words about the Prime Minister's meeting with His Excellency President Xi Jinping, the President of the People's Republic of China. We have also put out a press release which should be available very shortly on the website of the Ministry of External Affairs if it is not there already. So as you all know, earlier today, in fact just a short while ago, Prime Minister Modi met with President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the 16th BRICS Summit. This was their first proper bilateral meeting at delegation level in nearly 5 years, the last one being on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit in Brasilia in 2019. So let me just flag some points made by the two leaders during their meeting. This meeting happened, as you are all aware, close on the heels of the disengagement and patrolling agreement and the resolution of issues that had arisen in the India-China border areas in 2020. Naturally, the two leaders welcomed the agreement reached between the two sides through sustained dialogue over the last several weeks in diplomatic as well as military channels. Prime Minister Modi underscored the importance of not allowing differences on boundary-related matters to disturb peace and tranquility on our borders. And in this context, the two leaders noted that the special representatives on the India-China boundary question have a critical role to play in the resolution of the boundary question and for the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border areas. Accordingly, they instructed the special representatives to meet at an early date and to continue their efforts in this regard. You may recall that Special Representative of India, Mr. Ajit Doval, who is also the National Security Advisor, and the Special Representative of the People's Republic of China, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, also a member of the Politburo, have met on the sidelines of international events, but they have not had a round of talks in the Special Representatives format since December 2019. So following today's meeting, we hope to schedule the next round of the SR's talks at an appropriate date. The two leaders also reviewed the state of bilateral relations from a strategic and long-term perspective. They were of the view that stable bilateral relations between India and China, the two largest nations on earth, will have a positive impact on regional and global peace and prosperity. And both of them stressed that with maturity and wisdom, and by showing mutual respect for each other's sensitivities, interests, concerns, and aspirations, the two countries can have a peaceful, stable, and beneficial bilateral relationship. As we have maintained during the last 4 years, the restoration of peace and tranquility in the border areas will create space for returning us towards the path of normalization of our bilateral relations. Officials will now take the next steps to discuss enhancing strategic communication and stabilizing bilateral relations by utilizing the relevant official bilateral dialogue mechanisms, including at the level of our respective foreign ministers. The two leaders also briefly reviewed regional and international developments of mutual concern and interest. They agreed to maintain close communication in this regard. Naturally, they also had a very productive exchange on BRICS and the potential for India and China to enhance cooperation on this particular platform. And in closing, Prime Minister Modi also assured India's full support to China's SCO presidency next year in 2025. Let me stop there and request my colleague, our Sherpa for BRICS, to make a few remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. I'll be very brief in the interest of the time. But let me just focus on the Honorable Prime Minister's visit to Kazan for the 16th BRICS Summit, which was at the invitation of President Putin. The theme of the BRICS Summit, as you all know, that strengthening multilateralism for just global development and security. Today, there have been two sessions in which Prime Minister participated. One is a closed plenary session, and the second one is open plenary session. Open plenary session included also representatives of businesses of all the member countries, as well as the financial institution representatives in the open session. At the end of the open session, the leaders adopted the Kazan Declaration, and the declaration captures the various elements and diverse elements discussed by the leaders during these sessions. It recognizes the reform for the UN and multilateral institutions. In particular, it recognizes the Johannesburg Declaration and reaffirmed the support for member countries' aspiration to be permanent members of the UN Security Council. Cooperation in the financial sector was another element. It also included elements like payment settlements in national currencies. And climate change was another area of interest for all the leaders. There was a lot of views expressed, and also combating terrorism. Prime Minister, in his remarks, clearly brought out the importance of people-centric BRICS cooperation. That was his emphasis, and the fact that the leaders have agreed to finalize list of partner countries in the expanded BRICS membership. It was welcomed. The modalities have also been finalized. So with the expansion of the BRICS, as you all know, that this is the first time that BRICS in an expanded format are meeting. The 9 members currently which have met this time. So you will have an additional partner countries. The list will be out in the net. So what it means to us is also inclusivity, diversity in the BRICS, and brings in the dimension of the global south right in the center of the BRICS discussions and discourse. So development becomes central. Prime Minister's remarks included the importance of global south. He also mentioned about the India's initiatives that have been appreciated within BRICS. For example, the Startup Forum, the skilled workforce, the Research and Development Vaccine Center, digital health, and the digital public infrastructure solutions, which are low-cost solutions for the interest of the countries of the global south. He also touched upon India's own initiatives, for example, the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure, and the Lifestyle for Environment. He urged the members of the BRICS to actually participate in these initiatives. As you know, Brazil is going to take over the chairship next year. Prime Minister wished the Brazilian President, Lula, all the very best for the success of the Brazilian chairship, and India will fully support in that process. Thank you very much.
We open the floor for questions.
Randeep, just a couple of questions because some of us literally have a plane to catch.
Okay. So Gaurav, please.
Sir, my name is Gaurav Sawant. I work for India Today and Aaj Tak. Sir, my question is, how will this meeting and will this meeting lead to easing of situation along the LAC? Is there need for new confidence building measures? Will there be new confidence building measures? And will soldiers spend the fifth year at the LAC in these freezing winters? The additional 50,000 odd troops on either side.
सर मैं विशाल पांडे हूं एबीपी न्यूज से। मेरा सवाल ये है कि आज प्रधानमंत्री मोदी और शी जिनपिंग की मुलाकात के बाद क्या ये कहा जा सकता है कि भारत और चीन के बीच रिश्ते अब सामान्य हो गए हैं, और इसी से जुड़ा हुआ कि क्या चीन पर भरोसा किया जा सकता है?
Gaurav, insofar as your question is concerned, it is certainly our expectation that as a result of not only the agreement that was arrived at just a couple of days ago between Indian and Chinese diplomatic and military negotiators, but also as a result of the endorsement of that agreement at the highest leader level possible between the two countries, as happened in the meeting today, where both Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping welcomed the efforts that were made by Indian and Chinese negotiators and the results that were achieved by that. I think these should certainly lead to an easing of the situation along the LAC. Insofar as your question related to confidence building measures is concerned, we have a number of confidence building measures, and these evolve continuously as the two sides engage once again in multiple formats. This is certainly a subject that I think will be under discussion between the two sides. Your last question about whether soldiers will be at the LAC for the fifth year, I would defer this question to our military leadership because this relates to operational matters, and I think it would be best that we let our military leaders dwell on this particular issue. विशाल, आपका जो सवाल था क्या हमारे जो रिश्ते हैं वो सामान्य की तरफ या सामान्य हो जाएंगे, मैं इतना ही कह सकता हूं कि पिछले 2 दिन में जो कदम हमने उठाए हैं, और ये कदम पिछले 2 दिन से हमारे सामने हैं, लेकिन इन पे जो काम हुआ है वो काफी समय से काम चल रहा है। मैं ये कहूंगा कि इनसे हमारी एक तरह से जो प्रक्रिया है,
External Affairs, after having held that bilateral meeting, there are some very important points that have been reflected. 2 of them, and Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, the Ministry of External Affairs has clarified that now there are the 2 special representatives, that's the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval from India's side and the Foreign Minister of China Wang Yi, who are going to be acting as special representatives and are going to resume these talks about how the disengagement and demilitarization along the line of actual control is actually going to happen. Again, the question, can China be trusted? The question that has also been posed. Now, there are some 50,000 troops that are along the line of actual control. They have been deployed. How soon can this demilitarization happen from both ends?
Well, first of all, thanks for welcoming me on your show. You know, I could only hear a part of the question because there was some sound-related issue. Let me mention that it's a good sign that this summit-level meeting has taken place between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. It's a very welcome development. And the announcement relating to the disengagement, which had come just a couple of days ago, that in fact helped to prepare the atmosphere for today's talks. Because had there not been such an announcement relating to disengagement, maybe the summit level meeting may not have even taken place. So certainly it helped to prepare the necessary groundwork for holding this meeting. Now, where will it lead to? You know, that is an issue which only time will tell. A lot of people in India are very skeptical about Chinese intentions because they've seen how China goes back on its commitments, and in fact it has a reputation of rubbishing agreements whenever it's convenient to them. So time will tell whether this agreement which has been reached relating to disengagement will be honored by the Chinese side. Of course, you know, our military folks speak of 3 Ds, disengagement, de-escalation, and demilitarization. And this disengagement would be perhaps just the first step in leading to de-escalation. Whether even this disengagement happens on the ground is something that our armed forces will have to monitor. Government will go by what the armed forces say about the ground situation because they alone know really what happens on the ground. So it remains to be seen. I may tell you that I have seen some media commentaries which say that while India is referring to it as a disengagement agreement, the Chinese media is saying that the two sides have resolved to disengage. So there is a slight difference. Let's see where things go. But maybe today's meeting will facilitate further requirements relating to disengagement.
Right, absolutely. Now, then a question on everybody's mind is that how long is it going to take? Because it has taken China up until 4 years to allow for any sort of communication to happen and some progress be made over the questions and questions that have been raised by India, but like you said about de-escalation, demilitarization, can we at this point of time set a timeline that this is going to be achievable maybe in the next 6 months or an entire year?
Is that question to me?
Yes, yes.
Well, it's for the armed forces and, you know, their negotiating teams to work out any timelines because they know what is possible to achieve. Strictly speaking, the agreements relating to disengagement fall entirely within the domain of the armed forces. They are directly involved. They are in a position to negotiate and monitor. Of course, the diplomats help to pave the way for the armed forces representatives to talk. So now it remains to be seen what sort of a timeline is possible, what the military commanders see as being achievable, how the talks take place between the two sides. But at the political level, certainly there is some improvement. The very fact that the summit level meeting took place after 5 years and that there is some progress in regard to the two very thorny areas which are Depsong and Demchuk.
Yeah.
And these are positive signs that I think the armed forces representatives will be able to better evaluate how they see the ground situation.
Okay, I also have with me Major General Shashi Asthana, and let me get him into the conversation. And Shashi Asthana, how do we move forward from here? Are trade ties, diplomatic ties, strategic ties also going to get an impetus after this overture that has been showed by China and that has been reciprocated by India?
Firstly, the meeting is a good sign, and whatever happened before the meeting in terms of the agreement announced, all these are very good signs. as far as the developments are concerned, whether diplomatically or the situation on ground on LAC. But let me interpret as to what has happened. At the LAC, at these 2 points, Depsang and Demchok, the closeness between the opposing troops is far too close. They are at a stone throw distance, and it is a situation is that it can trigger into a unfortunate incident or a small, shall I say, skirmish at any point of time. So considering that, it is good that we disengage at these points. As far as the practicality of any agreement, which is yet to be spelled out in clear as to what exactly is the patrolling arrangement hereafter, the structures which they have made as a result of the first movers advantage which they got, whether they are going to dismantle or not remains to be seen. As far as the patrolling rights are concerned, what had happened was that we were earlier patrolling at Depsang and Demchok in these areas. There are a number of patrolling points. I won't go into too much of details. And they were also patrolling at certain points, like there is a point called Butse. Now, they stopped our patrolling, we stopped their patrolling. Presumably, this patrolling may restart. Now, why this patrolling is necessary is to ascertain as to whatever, because we have claim lines, we feel that this is our area, so therefore you must patrol up to that particular area. So that would be a positive sign in case it starts. Apparently, the way it is being spelled out in the media, a kind of patrolling arrangement has been made. Now, wherever the buffer zones were, I think that has not been touched in this agreement, as I am given to understand so far.
Okay.
So that this is the kind of arrangement.
Okay.
Now, as far as the other issues are concerned, yes, you can't trust China. You had a whole lot of agreements, 1993, 96, 2005, 12, and a whole lot of 2013, whole lot of them, and they were all junked when they thought that they could encroach more. So therefore, Chinese strategic aim continues to remain that it has to be Asia-centric, China-centric Asia, and therefore, and incremental encroachment is the part of their DNA, which will continue, and we will have to perhaps certainly guard our borders and be cautious of the implementation of whatever is being said, as well as ensure that no subsequent encroachment takes place.
Okay. Okay, all right. Vichakranti, again, interesting to note that it is the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval who is going to be carrying forward official conversation, discussions with the Chinese foreign minister when it comes to them being appointed as the special representatives. You think at this point the foreign minister S. Jaishankar has been consciously not put forward in the further set of conversations that are going to be had that will allow for the eventual, hopefully, de-escalation and demilitarization along the line of actual control. These are the two individuals who are going to lead the way in bringing about a quid pro quo, bringing about a status quo ante in this particular situation.
Diplomacy is basically the art of taking out possibilities, extracting possibilities from whatever situation or even absence of possibility looks on the ground. What has happened, the discussions and all negotiations on the part of foreign minister, the defense experts, political leadership has taken place already. What we heard 2 days ago is the result of those efforts. Now it is the application of what has been agreed to. So that is the point where the National Security Advisor comes. So I think if Mr. Doval and his counterpart from China, when they start talking, that will be going to the next step where we had arrived 2 days ago. And that I feel is a positive development. We should look at it. Although I agree with both of our senior friends who just now made it very more than clear that you cannot take Chinese on their face value. They many times, rather most of the times, they agree with you on certain points, and whenever it is convenient and it is suitable to them, it is their choice of time when they just forget what they had signed or what they had agreed to, and they would do just opposite. We have to live with that. We can't change the Chinese from what they are, but we must learn to live with what they are. And one very positive thing which because I was a teenager boy when China attacked India in 1962, and since then I have been within my own limitations, keenly observing how China behaves. So we have been noticing that China has been practically, if I can use a term which is not very palatable, a rogue and a bully. On the other side, unfortunately, our leadership in the first 50, 60 years, and especially in 40 years after 1962, they have been behaving, unfortunately, quite timid. So this is only in the last 10 years that Chinese are finding a very new kind of Indian leadership, that who can stand up to them, who can look eye to eye with them, and who can, what we saw in Doklam, 72 days, the Indian army, kept hold of the Chinese. They didn't let them move, and finally it was Xi Jinping who had to give orders for their retreat, their coming back. Remember in 2014 when Xi Jinping, this has been their tradition. When they are visiting another country or there is a big visit of other country's leader, just before that they do something very aggressive and to confuse the other side. And this is what they had done in Ladakh just before President Xi Jinping arrived in India and was in Ahmedabad. It was first time in the history of relations between India and China that he was given choice very clearly that if by next morning your army doesn't move out of those areas where they have their incursions in Ladakh, then your only choice is that you also go back. It was not in open, but it is very much understandable. And everybody was surprised to see that the very next morning Chinese had already gone back. In 2017, when Doklam, if you remember, it was just before BRICS meeting when Xi Jinping and his government agreed to pull back their army. In 2022, again, in Ladakh, they agreed to pull back just before the next summit of BRICS. And now again, 2 days before the summit of BRICS, they say that, okay, we agree. It only shows that Xi Jinping may be a very strong leader, but he is very, very sensitive about his image, international image, and he didn't want that he should be taken as a rogue or a bully during this summit. That is why that was one reason why we see that there is an agreement. Now we have to ensure, I hope our leadership, the team of diplomats, political leaders and army establishment, they will.
Okay.
They are going to ensure that China agrees to and implements what has been agreed.
Okay, I also have Rityuksha Mani Tiwari. Rityuksha, what's your assessment? And there have been a number of examples that have been given by Mr. Vijay Kranti about 1963, 2014, 2017, and every single time there seems to be some sort of atmosphere created where there could be talks that could materialize into strong action that will benefit both nations, and there is going to be these encroachment activities of the Chinese into India's eastern border, but they somehow do not fructify. Will this be any different this time around?
Hi, thanks for having me over. In my assessment, the current truce, whether it will actually evolve into something as a full-fledged rapprochement between India-China relations, of course, that is something which only unfolds with a certain time period. But if we look at China's policy towards us, and as the references have been made of the past, I think very distinctly 3 phases of India-China relations have been visible. The first phase, as it was mentioned, 1949 to 62, that should be looked at, where China viewed India as a very important aspect of keeping, relations neutral with other countries, with other powers, specifically the US. The second phase was, of course, 62 to 89 in the backdrop of, the Sino-Indian War, and of course the split between Sino-Soviet, establishments, and on the other hand, India moving closer to Soviet Union. So China looking at India again from the perspective of a third power, or the major power.
Right.
And following the collapse of the 1991 Soviet Union collapse and the end of that phase of Cold War, the third phase began. And I think this is where we get to see, the current context of China looking at India in a certain way. Looking at India as a factor which is essential to its peripheral security. And also looking at India, which is now coming of age, outside the shadow of the two great powers.
Right, absolutely. I'm sorry, I'll have to interrupt you over there. I'm out of time. Thank you very much for joining me on the telecast, Rityuksha. And I also thank all the other panelists who've, participated in this conversation.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.